Okay, Mr. Chair, we are now live streamed.
Okay, all right. Welcome everybody to tonight's meeting, January 20th, 2022, for the Traffic and Transportation Committee of Community Board 10 here in Brooklyn. My name is Anthony Marino, Chair. We are following up. This is a continuation discussion based on a conversation that we had with the DOT regarding neighborhood loading zones and how we want to respond and our thoughts on that. So I'm sure everyone has continued observations and discussions about it. Josephine, I know you have a beautiful slideshow presentation. To refresh our memory.
Yes, DOT also responded back. So I put some of the responses in a PowerPoint. So I'm going to share my screen.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Dean. Well, that's a messy desktop.
Okay, can
That's a busy desktop.
That's a busy desktop right there.
Can everyone see me? See the screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So I'm just going to go through a few slides here. Gee, it seems like only 9 days ago, we were all here on Zoom, and the New York City Department of Transportation representatives presented the neighborhood loading zones. And they gave us an overview and some slides, and I put the overview slide before you. And just to remind everyone, the goal of the program is to reduce the amount of delay and safety issues that stem from double parking by providing dedicated space for vehicles to load and unload goods and passengers, especially on residential streets. They identified target users, personal vehicles for quick pickup and drop off of passengers, groceries, etc., commercial delivery of vehicles for residential and commercial delivery, taxis, and for hire vehicles for passenger pickup and drop off. Current locations, there are about 146 NLZs throughout the city, continuing to expand the program to the 5 boroughs. And the signage and regulation, which DOT said there was some flexibility with, is no parking Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So the Department of Transportation, after our June meeting, put up on their website a suggestion map, and they received 85 total suggestions. And mostly the suggestions were west of 5th Avenue, both narrow corridors and busier, wider corridors with some commercial activity. So their final location list was shared with members of the committee. And the placements were based on community suggestion and DOT's assessment. Again, the focus was on narrow streets as well as streets with bike lanes, two-way streets. And DOT may alter locations based on community feedback in the future. So a lot of committee members reached out to us during the last few days and asked about the background of how NLZ was formed. And the New York City Council introduced this legislation, and it was voted upon back in November, requiring New York City DOT to install neighborhood loading zones. And as DOT said, 145 were installed to date. So I just, put the on the screen here was the intro, the final 2279, which breaks it down a little bit. What the mission of the department to establish the neighborhood loading zones to enhance and reduce traffic congestion, essentially what was discussed at our last meeting. The goal in the next 3 years is to install at least 500 total loading zones citywide. And no later than January 1st of 2023, the department shall submit to the Speaker of the Council, the Mayor, and publish on its website a report detailing the ongoing implementation of the requirements of the subdivision of this section and any recommendations for further expanding. So at some point, as they move throughout the city, they will report these locations in a formal report to the City Council and to the Mayor. So on DOT's website, it does really, break down neighborhood loading zones, if any of you've had a chance to take a look. And again, highlighting the three, it aims to reduce double parking on narrow residential streets by providing space at the curb for activities such as package deliveries by commercial vehicles, taxi and car service pickup, and drop off, and active loading and unloading of personal vehicles. So DOT did respond to questions from our last meeting, and they shared the DOT parking regulation page. That was a question that was asked. When parking is prohibited by signs or rules, no person shall stop a vehicle attended or unattended except temporarily for the purpose of and while expeditiously receiving or discharging passengers or loading or unloading property to or from the curb. There was a question from one of the board members and says, if we're unloading, can we be summoned? And the answer is no, as long as you're in the vehicle, right, or near your vehicle, you're loading and unloading. A summons cannot be issued. So the placement criteria, the quick criteria that was described in their first presentation, they provided a little bit more details for us to review. So neighborhood loading zones are recommended on corridors such as blocks consisting of large residential buildings, which are 15 units or above, narrow streets such as one-way streets with less than 40 feet in length, with bike lane or bus route, two-way streets that are commonly double parked and not wide enough for vehicles to pass, double parked vehicles without entering the opposite lane, blocks consisting of mostly alternate side parking regulation, and NLZ should be placed near existing commercial retailers near the entrance of the block and in front of entrances of large residential buildings. So also on DOT's website, if you've all had a chance to look at it, they have posted other NLZs that are already in effect throughout the 5 boroughs. I just highlighted Brooklyn because we're in Brooklyn. So our neighbors in Sunset Park, there are NLZs on 48th, 49th, 50th, and 51st Street across various avenues, Park Slope, 2nd and 3rd Streets. And in Williamsburg on Manhattan Avenue. So if you all wanted to take a look, they're posted there as well. So tonight, we're here to talk about the proposed locations in Community District 10. So what I did was I always like to visualize, each location so we get to see it. And pretty much as I was going through them, they really do reflect the DOT guidelines that were shared with us. So the first is 307 72nd Street. To the left is a location view. As you can see, it's a larger apartment building. It is 72nd Street, as we all know, is a narrow street with a bike lane. And this loading zone will be 40 feet at the beginning of the block. And to the right is, I tried to give a nice view of the street. The next location is 160 72nd Street, also a narrow street with a bike lane, 40 feet in front of the building. So to the left again is the location, another large apartment building, and to the right is the block view. The third location is 375 76th Street. It's a side street off of 4th Avenue, opposite the subway exit entrance, 33 feet beginning of the block to the hydrant. Fourth is 401 76th Street. Again, you can see another large apartment building. It's a one-way street. There is no bike lane on this block. Number 5 is 243 78th Street, which is between Ridge Boulevard and 3rd Avenue, and is proposed 30 feet, again, from the corner. 6th is a two-way street, Colonial Road, 9108. There is a bike lane on the east lane, and it is going to be measured at 30 feet. There is a no standing zone opposite, which is not part of the neighborhood loading zones. So there is just indicate that across the street opposite the proposed loading zone, there is a no standing zone currently, which is not related to this program.
And you can see a car park there.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm surprised just one.
Yeah. Okay, so 7 is 278 92nd Street, a block we all know. It is a one-way street, commercial corner, very busy corner in the district. On to viewing the screen to your left is Starbucks. To your right is Penny and Tico. There's a lot of in and out here of Starbucks and Penny and Tico. As you could see, actually in front of Panantico, that where that car is parked is a fire hydrant. So there's a lot of in and out, and the parking, the zone would be in front of 40 feet in front of 278 92nd Street, which is that music store that's behind Starbucks. Let's see, number 8 is 402 Bay Ridge Parkway. It's 25 feet after the bus stop. It's a two-way street with a bicycle lane. We all know Bay Ridge Parkway.
That's me.
That's you, that's your building,
right,
name,
Larry.
right? Okay, cool. So it would be 25 feet after the bus stop. Number 9 is 130 Bay Ridge Parkway, 40 feet, two-way street, also with a bike lane. 10 is 6701 Colonial Road. Colonial Road is a two-way street. It does have a bike lane,
Oh, okay.
as you can see. There, again, a large apartment building. So this would be 67th Street, 40 feet to the end of the block. 11 is 8831 Fort Hamilton Parkway, 30 feet after the bus stop. There is a bike lane also on both sides of Fort Hamilton Parkway, as you know. 9031 Fort Hamilton Parkway. So I call some of these pairs because there are loading zones on both sides of the street. So when there are two on one block face, I just put pair in parentheses, and that just denotes that you'll see in the next slide that there's an additional one. So 9031 Fort Hamilton Parkway, 40 feet in front of the address. And again, a large apartment building. 9040, which is across the street, or let's say, yes, across the street, 9040 Fort Hamilton Parkway. 40 feet in front of the address, as you could see, paired to the left and to the right here. 14 is 8220 Fort Hamilton Parkway. And so this would be 40 feet after the hydrant. So I drew a red arrow on this photo because the hydrant is hiding behind that car that's illegally parked, blocking the hydrant. And so to the right, you can see this is that turnaround where the community board worked with the Department of Transportation to do safety enhancements here. And it's a bicycle lane too on this kind of narrow turn at this location. 15, 8615 Fort Hamilton Parkway, 25 feet after the curb. Again, this is behind the PC Richard building. It's also a very large apartment building. 16 is 9330 Fort Hamilton Parkway. So this would be in front of the building, 40 feet towards the end of the block. 17 is 59 Gelston Avenue, and the loading zone is proposed 25 feet from the entrance to the curb cut. So I showed it here to the right so you could see where the first garage is. So that pole would be the end of the loading zone. 351 Marine Avenue. It would be 40 feet in length in front of the building, which is also a very large apartment building. 19149 Marine Avenue. Again, as you can see, another large building, 30 feet in length, the end of the block towards 96th Street. There is a pair across the street at 150 Marine Avenue, which will also be 30 feet in length, beginning of the block. 21 is 555 Ovington Avenue, a very large building, 40 feet in front of the address. And to the right, there is a picture of the block view. This is a busy block, but it's there is no bike lane on Ovington. 22, 7501 Ridge Boulevard, 25 feet in front of the address. And again, this is another location on Ridge where there's a pair. 23, 7502 across the street, 40 feet in front of the address. Location 24, 8718 Ridge Boulevard, 25 feet in front of the street address. 25, 6902 to 6912, a very large building, Ridge Boulevard, 40 feet beginning of block. It's a two-way street with a northbound bicycle lane. 26, 6735 Ridge Boulevard, 40 feet in front of the address. 27 is 7273 Shore Road. So to the left, you could see the apartment building, and then to the right is the view on Shore Road. It's kind of one of the curvier blocks, winding portions of Shore Road. Next is 8321 3rd Avenue, the 84th Street side, and the proposed loading zone will be 10 feet after the hydrant toward 3rd Avenue. Number 29 is 565 86th Street, 35 feet from the curb gate entrance.
The 85th or 85th?
I'm sorry, Larry?
It says on the right-hand side, it says 85th Street. But the top 29 says 565 86th.
565 86th Street.
But the
I
other-
think this is a building that may go through. I mean, I'll double check it, but you're right. It looks like on the same block. I'll double check that. Maybe it was just a typo. I'll have to look at the list. I don't have that in front of me, but I'll check 29. 30 is 310 85th Street, 30 feet before the hydrant. 31 is 465 84th Street, 40 feet in front of the address. 32 is 353 Bay Ridge Parkway, 30 feet after the hydrant, and this is another pair on Bay Ridge Parkway. This is between 3rd and 4th. Across the street at 354 Bay Ridge Parkway, 40 feet in front of that entrance. So board members, when we last met, had some questions about compliance and enforcement. I did share the streets. There was a Streets blog article that had that I shared that had some good links to it. There was a photo on the cover of the article that was taken by the author Gersh Kunstman, and it's the caption is, imagine if this truck driver was given space to leave his packages in a mini distribution center where they would be picked up by another worker on a cargo bike. And I think we also noted in one of the questions that asked, will FedEx and will commercial drivers be aware of this program? Are they being informed? And will they utilize, as in this photo to the right, there is curb space that's not being utilized by the driver. He's opting to unload in the middle of the street. Now, maybe there was a car there earlier, but there was a question about, will drivers be using these curb space and making sure that they're aware of the program? There were also questions raised about the hours of operation, currently 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Some members asked if those times could be changed, perhaps to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. There was also a question raised about signage, design, and visibility. So to the left, there is currently what it looks like down, let's see, down here is the blue sign, which is kind of at car length level, and then above it is the no parking from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Use paint.
All right, and there was some board members that said, could they be
Paint the
denoted with
curb or
paint?
something,
Paint
yeah.
the curb so that drivers and commercial delivery vehicles are aware of exactly where the loading zone is and where they would be permitted. So, and getting back to you, Larry, it is 565 85th Street. So that was a typo. My apologies. It was 565 85th Street. And I'm going to stop my share for now.
That was awesome.
Turn it back over to you. I think sometimes it's helpful to see the locations visually.
Yeah, I mean, no, that was fantastic. And thank you so much for that. I mean, I work, my office is on 2nd Street and 7th Avenue. So those loading zones, those neighborhood loading zones are right where I would park when I go to my office basically every day. So I live and breathe these loading zones. I know exactly what they are, how they're used. And I mean, I will say that, like, a lot of the time the delivery trucks will just double park in front of the spot and just block it anyway. Like, they won't go into the spot. They'll just double park in front of the spot, do their deliveries. And so we're still going around. So I think for this to work, I mean, I'm just kind of jumping in with my 2 cents based on my experience with these things. The people who are going to utilize them, especially with DHL and UPS, all these guys, they need to know they're there, because they're just it's it's, I don't know, it's not, it's not working the way I think they think it's working. Of course, how they came to the conclusion, I think seeing the blocks makes a lot more sense. I guess they did go with what they were saying, like narrower blocks with bike lanes, things like that. But still, I think Doris, I'm sure you still have a lot to say with what data was being used to actually, come up with these spots. So I'm skeptical. I understand the idea of them, and I think the idea of them is great, but I'm skeptical of how they're actually used. And this is just from my own experience, having seen every day how they're used and misused. So Dean, you have your hand up, go for it.
Yeah, one thing that I'm aware of from the past, I think it's still true today. The major companies that do deliveries, every day, FedEx, UPS, those drivers, not that they're timed, but they have an approximate amount of time that the company, quote unquote, allows them to do their deliveries. So if using these loading zones is going to add to that time, I don't think they're going to use them. And you know my opinion on them overall, but I kind of think that's still in effect. My son Damon, number of 10, 12 years ago, applied with UPS, and when he was going through the procedure, he was kind of told that there's an approximate time amount for every load you take out, and they want these guys moving. So that's going to be a potential issue for everybody. Thank you.
Judith? Thank you, Dean.
So thank you, Josephine, for that visual. It did show me that they were true to their word. So the places they picked followed their criteria. And when I was looking, some of the streets, it was appropriate. I just think there's just way too many. If it's a pilot program, if Sunset Park has 4 or 3, and we're gonna have 35, I really think they should pick 10, see how they work. And pick 10, I mean, they were chock full. The low 70s between 3rd and 4th were really chock full. That Fort Hamilton Park, we chock 2, 3 in Fort Hamilton, 3 here, 3 there, see how they work, and then come back. Don't load up 35. That's crazy. And so if it's a test, it should be a test. And if they're only supposed to do 500 in the first year, and there's 50 community boards, well, that should be 10 per board, not 35. So that's my main objection.
It did seem like they really liked Fort Hamilton Parkway, and they just chose every couple of blocks. So we'll put one, it was very Fort Hamilton Parkway heavy. Yeah, Doris.
I would, in Fort Hamilton Parkway, although it is a bus route and a bike lane, it is quite wide. And if somebody's double parked, you can always get around them because I live right there. And I want to support what Judy said. I think we are being we are given a very large portion of the loading zones in the first, and I don't think they're evenly distributed, and I don't think we understand, and they have not really explained to us the methodology of how they were distributing them citywide. And it does look like we are being hit fairly hard, and I think 2 per block is a very difficult scenario. I think they should consider 1 per block and then revisit it at another time.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, Anthony, in Sunset Park and in Park Slope, I don't know the total numbers within there are only like 3 or 4 blocks, but over a span of a few blocks. I don't know how many number with it doesn't list it on the website.
Right.
They'll say it's, one street from 4th to 7th Avenue. I don't know if there's 1 per block or 2 per block.
Yeah, I
total
can.
number is.
There's I can see them in the Park Slope ones. I can see because I know actually where those
Okay.
are. But
The Sunset Park ones are 49th Street and 48th Street, and they are narrow blocks and they're bus routes. I don't know the demographics, how many apartment houses, but they are, they are fairly narrow. They're kind of like our blocks.
Right.
I just dropped in the chat the link to their page on DOT where it had where the existing ones were and the information on that. I apologize for being late tonight, but I thought that might be relevant to your point.
Yeah, see, I got it. Yeah. Judith, do you have your hand up still or just?
Oh, no, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay, no, it's okay. I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Anthony, excuse me, it's Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Do you think there's going to be any enforcement on these locations? There's no enforcement at the bus stops, and as you can see at hydrants, I can't see there's going to be any enforcement at these locations.
I mean, yeah, your guess would be as good as mine. You're right. I know there, again, I can speak for the ones over in Park Slope. There's enforcement. I mean, you risk getting a ticket fairly quickly over there.
But here you don't see this. I mean, you see right there hydrants blocked. You can see on 3rd Avenue in front of Starbucks on 92nd where they want to put it. There's always cars all on the bus stop there.
I will say that particular spot, the Starbucks and Paniatico, that is like an epicenter. There's the outdoor dining, then
Right.
the neighborhood loadings. I mean, that's like a perfect storm.
You're lucky you get across there alive, believe me.
Yeah. That's a rough corner.
Right. And I think the traffic on 92nd Street is really going into a lot of the, the Starbucks or, right at that
Right.
corner.
Right.
I agree.
I have 2 comments. In the Streets blog article, the people on Avenue C commented that the loading zones are consistently parked with regular cars, and sometimes they're there for several days on end. So it's not a car parked for 2 hours, it's parked for days. And the other thing, I'm concerned about loading zones that are near the corner or at the corner and there is sufficient daylighting, because DOT talks about double parking and bicyclists, but they're not talking about pedestrian safety. And I think if we don't have sufficient daylighting, pedestrians could be at risk.
What is daylighting?
Oh, you leave extra space at the corner, so that
But
they can
enhance
see you when
visibility
you're crossing the
crossing.
street. There's not a car up to the what do you call that, crossing thing?
Crosswalk.
Thank you.
Judith, go ahead.
Josephine, in their proposal, did they tell us how much they're funding community education about these loading zones?
No.
So, I mean, I could not vote for this until I know how they were going to publicize it to us, to the businesses and who are going to be utilizing it, and as Joe said, enforcement. So I would like to know their budgetary support to this program.
Mm-hmm.
Jane Marie?
Yeah, thank you. I would just add that when it was first brought up to us, as I had mentioned at our last meeting, they had only spoken about like this limited number. And when you look at the links that I had put out of what was existing in Sunset Park, there were about 8. There seemed to have been about 10 in Park Slope. And so this here rise of 35 and then the method to how those sites were chosen, just based on that approximate 1-month window that the online form was available for people to drop in suggestions, really didn't seem to be clear, the number, and so it wasn't until I saw the Streets blog article that I realized that it was something that was even larger, with 500 citywide, I believe it had said. So that number and the growth in the number wasn't really clear to us. And so what's now evident is that they have a quota to meet. And Bay Ridge is getting hit very hard. And because they're looking at our, our commercial corridors that are already so heavily trafficked that it does make it very challenging for all of our residents and all of our businesses. And it does not take into consideration the other things that are going on in our neighborhood and with the different other plans, like such as what's happening with the open streets. Like that hasn't really fully been figured out yet. And yet this is kind of being layered on top of it at a time when, it's not really conducive. It didn't really have the neighborhood impact. And even our feedback really seems to be very limited in scope because they've already, outlined all these different sites and that we've not just comparatively that it hadn't, I knew this was phase 3 or whatever, I believe that was to this project, that it was now going to include our community board, but usually that would put it on par with what was existing in the neighboring community board, which was about 8 sites. And so for this big jump that we're anticipating really seems like a burden to our community at this time in the number and the way it's being rolled out.
Yep.
Thank you. Did Josephine, I read, did they mention how they're going to track and figure out, like, it said something in the presentation where they're going to report on how successful maybe that they were, like, is there a plan? Do we know, is someone going to sit in a car and watch?
Yeah, I mean, the plan is broad. That's,
I mean, like how?
Yeah. They're going to, review, they said, the efficacy of the implementation of these zones. And it's very vague. It's not, we're going to go out 5 days or we're going to go out.
I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Right. There's no threshold to meet, like in 6 months, we're going to see, does this one work? Or in a year, it just sort of, I can't, Doris, go ahead.
They had no data to say how they determined this. They had no data on 301 calls or parking tickets issues. So how they have no criteria against which to monitor this.
Right. There's no control to even say,
exactly.
we know that
all those math classes.
Right. There, like, we know that 85th Street usually gets X amount of traffic. And so since putting in the neighborhood loading zone, it's gotten Y amount of traffic. And let's figure it out. Like, there's not, it's just not, it just seems like they picked out of a hat. It just feels a little haphazard. I think that's what we're all feeling. Dean, yes.
If we recall from the last meeting with DOT, in terms of the disparity that we have so many loading zones in our neighborhood, DOT's answer was, well, we're going to revisit the other areas. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's any chance they're reducing anything on one hand. The other thing, in terms of what Judy brought up about education, over the last 20, 21 years that some of us have been on this board, they really don't have funding to educate. We've seen many changes happen. One of them being where you could park in the T and when you could not at one time because they wanted to turn for the fire engines. There was no advertising for that. So that is not really in their budget. When you find out about it, you find out about it. So I don't see any education coming through. Right. The other point I'd like to make is possibly down the road a bit, if members want to volunteer and just monitor, a loading zone that is very close to them, we could do that. I don't think it will change anything, but it's something we might want to do. But again, I don't think it'll change a thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
Right, and also from my conversation with DOT and at the committee level, my understanding is these are being put forward. They are going to accept feedback if we had, objections to locations for specific reasons. If we have, changes, a recommended change in the hours, we could certainly put that forward. And any other concerns that we may have as part of our formal feedback. They're looking to feedback, not an up or down, because they were pretty clear that these are being installed. And then will be reviewed.
Judith?
Well, it's like the commercial. They've already made the signs, or they've already made the balloons. Well, once those signs are up, lots of luck in changing anything. They may, time will tell.
Do you want to hear from Nymphy? Not in my front yard? You don't want to hear that?
Judith,
Judith.
That's what it is. That's
I,
it. Take my spot.
Please call me Judy, or I'll think you're really angry with me. But, so I think that even though, as Dean said, it's a done deal, we should look at the list and suggest some deletions. And they could be the Third Avenue one, it could be the density along Fort Hamilton. We should try to get it down, maybe down to 15, and use the parity argument if we'd like. So if we're stuck with it, let's at least reduce. We definitely should put in the recommendation for reduction in hours. And then we should put in our recommendations. Community education is a must, enforcement is a must, and that if DOT is going to do this, then they have to institute maybe a joint meeting with the police department, or a joint meeting with the two merchant associations and things like that. So we really force them to do their job and not just put up signs and walk away.
Agreed. Doris?
One of the things Judy brought up at the last meeting is this, they allow you to park there, basically, if you're unloading your groceries and they can see you, then you're right there getting in and out of the car. But if you are bringing someone to or from a doctor's office who has mobility issues, and you've got to bring them up and down to their apartment, it does not address those needs. And there are very real needs in our community. So I think there's a big portion of the need for loading zones that isn't being addressed, and is very important.
Judy, go ahead.
So maybe if we
Go
know,
for it. You're on a roll.
maybe that in the senior center areas, we could have the DOT issue some sort of placard you could put in your front window to say, I'm delivering the senior, or I'm delivering, so that there may be a way to help at least not have tickets be issued. If it really is going to take more time to get someone up to a doctor's office at the third floor of 9201, or wherever they might be.
Right.
So maybe that's a community project. So there's a lot of work to do to make these work. I think they're clueless. So
I think it does. Yeah. To your point, I think it does seem like they think this is more of a solution for package drop off for trucks, for commercial trucks, and for people maybe bringing groceries real fast. I don't think they're thinking of all these other uses that are valid uses that, you might be taking someone into the house or into an apartment. I think
putting your groceries up to the 6th floor of your apartment building is equally slow.
Right.
Right. Or maybe they're thinking it more of like someone's moving into an apartment. And so someone's at the car watching the stuff and they're making trips like a moving van or something. It just doesn't seem like on the residential level, they really thought it all out. And it seems it's more commercial focused, at least initially, based on data that we're still waiting for. Doesn't exist.
Don't hold your breath.
I'm not.
So the icon has to include people with people, not just a person with a box. That's it.
Well, I think I would certainly recommend that the signage has to change, and better placement of that signage. I mean, it's just not clear what it is, why I can't park here, or how long I can park here. Or, I mean, I certainly would add that recommendation as well, that they really have to rethink the signage.
Maybe it has to say 15 minutes, or limit 15 minutes, or something like that.
Something. I don't know. But then if I'm legitimately loading and unloading for 2 hours, right? Then let's say I am moving into an apartment, right? And I have to,
Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah.
I guess.
Steve Harrison hit the nail on the head the other evening. He said, neighborhood loading zone. I don't know if he used this word, but basically it's a misnomer. It's a commercial loading zone.
Right.
And if you put the word commercial there, I think people would think a lot quicker. Oh, can I park? They'd be more aware. Oh, maybe I can't park here.
But do commercial loading zones belong on the middle of a mid-block on 72nd Street? I don't know.
It does feel more truthful, though, just call it a commercial loading zone than it's sort of a neighborhood. I don't know.
Right, but it's not limited to just commercial vehicles.
No, I know, but it feels like that's the focus.
Right. But I think it is open to,
That's not what we wanted to be.
Delivery.
No.
right, livery vehicles, drop-offs.
Delivery loading.
Well, I don't think they're going to change the name
Yeah,
for us.
right.
So yeah.
I think the program is that, but.
What are we going to do? What's our action?
Right, that's
How
what
about
we
we
need
do
to,
this? How do we put them into some sort of action to at least get some attention and make a record?
I have a
Anthony,
very good suggestion. For beer drinkers, they'll love it. Let's all have a beer and cry in our beer.
Oh, gee, you're getting so cynical in your
yes,
own.
Josephine, sorry, yes. Oh.
I would start by saying we support the concept,
Hmm.
but, and I'll let other people do buts.
But too many, but too many in certain areas, but too much time, but bad
Yeah.
sign, but.
And signage.
I mean, we can make our butt list.
I'm sorry, Josephine, go ahead.
so I don't know if you've taken questions from, after committee questions, there was one attendee that has a question.
Oh, sure, yeah. Hold on, let me go down there and see. Okay, can I get a copy of the, are you giving out copies of the PDF?
Yes, I could
Oh,
share
okay.
that. And then someone has a hand raised, Mr. Peterson.
Okay.
Mr. Peterson, you had a question?
Hi, yeah, I actually just have a comment because I'm one of the residents that submitted for the loading zone at 8220 Fort Hamilton Parkway.
Okay,
So
great.
I've been here 9 years. I went to some of the meetings when DOT did the study of the street space outside my apartment. I'm at 8208, 2 doors down. So I think they found in that study 80% of cars exceed the speed limit by 15 miles an hour. So what I see is delivery trucks parking in the bike lane, which forces cyclists into the roadway, which forces drivers onto the shoulder, but the road isn't actually that wide. And then on top of this, you have a bus route and then honking because somebody's parked in the bike lane. So at 8220, I strongly, urge folks on the committee to have a look at that and include that if you're looking to cut down the number of loading zones, to really try to hold on to 8220 because it's sorely needed in the space.
Okay, great. And we'll also ask for some speed enforcement there as well. Thank you for bringing that to us.
Yeah.
We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. There's some data we can actually.
Yeah, definitely. Jane had her
Right.
hand up. Jane?
I was just going to add
mean-
that the kind of data that the resident shared is something that we felt was sorely lacking from the DOT's presentation. And that's the kind of thing which, helps us even when we've done different things like, just even to equate, like when we have budget meetings, we have to rank things. We have to look at data and look at requests, look at complaints, look at all of the information. And there was information that was missing because they just had the website open for approximately 1 month. I still don't feel that it was well publicized for the entire community. It received approximately 85 suggestions, but there is no data mentioned for these sites. And so it seems to become more anecdotal for many of the cases. And that, as Judy has said, as Steve has said, and Dean, I believe, just mentioned as well, if we're going to consider a neighborhood loading zone, then we have to consider the needs of the neighborhood. Thank you.
That very concisely, I think, says what we're trying to convey. I mean, there's just not enough input from the actual community, from the neighborhood. I think I had mentioned that too, like even having, street by street, if we had to, have like James came and specifically said, we need one here. That's great to hear. Like, love that. Like, want more of that. Now we're just they're just putting these things there, and people are going to wake up one morning and they're going to be there and they're going to be like, what is this? And it just doesn't feel very neighborly. And I agree, Jane, completely with what you said. It just doesn't feel like there's enough feedback from the neighborhood. And a ranking system. Maybe we start with 5 of these or 10 of these and see how it goes. And then in 6 months we do, 5 more, as opposed to just, 31 showing up one day. And, there has to be something we know it's coming, and we know we can't stop it necessarily, but maybe we can slow it down, or at least implement it in a way that, feels more useful.
And more thoughtful.
More thoughtful, yeah.
And more thoughtful and more responsive to the needs and of the neighborhood and the data that has been shared with us thus far. Because right now we really have very little. And, you know, I'm sure, just as Mr. Peterson shared about his block, that there may be other people who do have more insights, more awareness of different studies that were done at different times. But DOT should have shared that with us, and unfortunately they didn't.
Thank you. So where do we go? Josephine, how do we organize all of this into a strongly worded letter?
Yeah, Doris has her hand up. I think she
Okay,
had a, I
I
think
just
the
wrote down
motion,
some notes at the
Okay, yeah.
board
I would
members,
say one of our is that we support the concept, but we believe there was insufficient input by the entire community. We would prefer that there's only one loading zone per block. And that they reduce the hours to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and that they do more publicity to the community and to the delivery people before anything is implemented, and that there be improved signage, because the signage is confusing.
Yeah.
So that's my summary.
so Doris, just a question as I was writing this down, when you were saying that the start really should be only one neighborhood loading zone per block to see how it goes. So you're saying the four that
The
are
pairs, yes,
proposed, the 4 pairs.
right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because I think 2 per block is a burden. And if after the implementation that they find that is not sufficient, come back to us and give us the data.
Okay, so looking at the 4 pairs, to have one neighborhood loading zone per block, that the hour reduction from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. To do more outreach about the program to both neighbors and the delivery companies.
Yes.
If Doris would accept this, I don't think we should say we accept the program, we like the program. Let's just make our comments, because the first thing they're gonna do is say, you guys liked it, you guys accepted it. But let's just give them comments without saying yay or nay.
Okay.
Just-
I didn't say I like the program. I said I like the
Concept.
concept.
Concept, okay.
Right.
But I accept your premise, because we know that we're dealing with a city agency.
Right.
And
Thank you.
thank you.
Judith, yes. Thank you, Doris. It's excellent as always. You're muted.
I'd like to add to your list, Doris. Could we say that we accept your process, your concept, but we want our neighborhood to be only have a pilot program, and that we want to limit the suggested zones to 15, no more than 15 in the entire neighborhood, and then add that no more than 1 on a block, better signage. And I would like to have a request that within maybe a 6-month study that we have concrete feedback with data so that we can evaluate those 15 and then there has to be an enforcement component in our proposal or our objections, that there be a concerted effort to integrate other either police enforcement or who else is it? Is police only traffic, or is there a different department that does traffic studies? So we want to, impact on traffic studies as well as enforcement of violations of the loading zone.
I agree with everything you say, Judy, except it cannot be a pilot program because the city council passed this legislation.
Yeah.
It is city law.
It's
Yeah.
city law.
And our councilman supported this proposal.
They only supported 500 in the whole city. So why are we, are there 50 community boards, Josephine? Am I correct?
There are 59 boards, but also I think the language of the bill was at least 500. So that doesn't mean that there can't be 2,500.
Okay, well, I think we should suggest a number that we think is an acceptable trial. Then call
Right,
it.
I think for the first implementation, we accept a lower number.
The first stage implementation, we don't want no more than 15 or something like that. Let's
Right.
cut the number down.
I would just be careful about asking for enforcement, because they're going to enforce everything against the passenger vehicles. And I don't want to see the passenger vehicles getting summonses. So let's leave enforcement out, let them do what they're going to do, because we don't need people getting more summonses.
And I also think we need to, in the preamble, the comments that Jane Marie made about, this is the timing's off. That one of our objections is the layering. There's so many changes within the street usage because of COVID and because we're out on the street more, that maybe that timing's a little off, that, you know, we've lost parking spaces for the open streets and now they're layering another kind of parking loss. And that, so I don't know if you can add that into your introductory comments, that timing's really not good.
It's going to be a very long letter.
Right, and that it needed to be more of a rollout from what from what the feedback is, that instead of it being, you know, a one and done kind of pop-up implementation, that you know, we've all been lagging with the changes due to COVID and the getting back to business and getting our community back on its feet. And there have been a number of rollouts that have been delayed and that are still under, you know, under new implementation, including the open streets, including, you know, we even had the delay with City Bike coming into the neighborhood and that, you know, that happening. Like, we've been trying to catch up with all those programs that were due to get started. So it would only serve the community better if we could have a staggered rollout, and this way that literature and you know, more community awareness is done before people are, as you're saying, finding these things happening on their corners that they're not aware of, and that we wanted to ask for the data from DOT or from interagency that would support the locations or the ranking of the locations so that we could best provide feedback.
It seems to me a lot of these programs, you know, open streets, the city bikes, all this stuff always starts sort of north in Brooklyn and works its way south to us. And so a lot of people have been living with this for some time, and the people who are implementing it have been living it for a long time. But by the time they get to Bay Ridge, it's sort of the end of the pilot program, right? And they're just like, all right, well, let's just, you know, well, we did it, and, you know, let's just roll it out because we want to be done with it. And so, you know, here, then that's why we always have to be so reactionary to it with city bikes and with the open restaurants and open streets. It's the same, because it's like, well, while you might be ready to throw this on us because you've been doing it to the rest of Brooklyn for some time, you know, we have to have a chance to process how it's going to change our community. Like, we need that opportunity to do that. And I think, you know, rolling out this plan in a phase might help to ease that a little bit. I agree with you, Jane. You know, not to just dump them all in you know, the month of February, just wake up and March 1st they're there, but to say maybe it'll take, you know, 3 or 4 months into the spring to do that. I think that's a terrible ask.
Right, but, you know, going back to the Streets blog article, it had said that they were to install 500 loading zones annually. Right. And that it all had kind of come to a stop in 2019. And so it seems that they're catching up on their totals, but the implementation of it, just as we've had to be on pause with so many things, this too may need to be on pause, or at least slowed down to a way that we could, you know, gradually bring it to the neighborhood. Because as Jean has said, things are going to happen, things are going to change. You know, and we're just going to try and make sure that our residents are prepared for it as well. Thank you.
Dean, you have your hand up, or is that from?
Yeah, Josephine, has being this past the city council, has our local council member discussed this with any with you or anybody?
No, I have not spoken to him.
Yeah,
about
well, you know what? Perfect reason for term limits. Here's a major thing he votes on. Not even feedback after he voted, never mind to get the opinion of the community. And this is just one of many things he's voted on without even asking the board or asking the community. Just, you know, thank God for term limits. What else could I say?
Anybody else? I think we, I mean, Doris, I think we have, oh, go ahead, Carmen, sorry.
I've said enough.
I'm sorry, I feel like so have I. Carmen, you're muted.
The one thing in the letter that I would like to stress is the high number of seniors in the neighborhood who tend to do all their errands very early in the day. So they may run a few errands, come back, park, drop off groceries or different things. And parking is so hard in Bay Ridge to begin with. This just adds, I would say, another layer for people, just a hardship on them, just trying to do their everyday errands. Like I think just keeping the human element. And then I just want to add one other thing. Because I don't drive anymore, I wasn't like paying too much attention to loading zones. But last Saturday I was on 3rd Avenue and 70th, and I had dropped something off at the thrift shop there, and there's a loading zone in front for about maybe a quarter of the block. And I was just watching the number of people who would park, go look at the sign, still leave their car there, run an errand, come back. And then when the truck came to deliver something, he had to go up to where there was an entrance for a parking lot to unload there. And it just felt like the Wild West, like nobody's paying attention to anything. And so it's almost like, it's kind of sad. It's just sad. We're getting this thing added to us, and yes, there's benefits, but to some degree, people are getting in the state of mind. They're going to do what they want, So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion for this and all that? I read
so-
that to make it effective.
Right, so,
Because I
in
feel like we're,
presenting this to the full board, I mean, certainly I think there should be a motion that's adopted by the committee, a recommendation that's made for consideration at the general board meeting on Monday. And I think Doris, Judy have put together, right, some thoughts.
And Jane Marie.
And Jean Marie.
Do you need to do it to you in an email, or you took notes and you're happy?
Well, I think maybe we should go over it again, because maybe it should be formal with a second discussion, and then,
So Doris started the ball rolling. So you want to make the first motion, Doris? For voting?
motion away.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, I have to find my notes. We request that the hours be reduced.
No, so we're making a motion that a letter be written a strong letter to be written to the
Department of Transportation,
Yeah.
providing comments on the neighborhood loading zone program.
Neighborhood loading zone. And our, the letter will contain a list of recommendations of how the loading zone program should be rolled out in our community in an incremental way to allow the community to adjust and develop the program in conjunction with the criteria of the Department of Transportation program. And bids shall include, and then you can do your list.
A reduction, a change in the hours from 8 to 6. A reduction in the number of sites. Specifically, initially there only be one loading zone per block. And that they consider phasing in the over a period of several months, and that there be an outreach, a publicity outreach campaign to the community and to the delivery companies. And I might have missed some things, but.
And the neighborhood.
The signage, do we talk about the
and
signage?
improve the signage,
Yeah.
and improve signage.
Signage and indicate the loading zones by special coloration, curb coloration, that the local senior centers, the community, what are they called? Business development districts and business organizations should be notified of the proper use of the loading
Right.
zone.
That community outreach, right?
Yeah. And you don't want to say anything about enforcement. Is that correct, Dean? Zip
yeah.
on enforcement.
Why
So-
wouldn't we say anything about enforcement?
You're muted, Dean.
He's afraid.
But I think what Dean said was the non-commercial vehicles will probably bear the brunt of that enforcement. Am I right, Dean? Because you were muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we should add in there when we talk about phasing in period over several months that after Mr. Peterson was nice to come and testify and share with us the importance of 8224 Hamilton Parkway, we'll make note of that as well.
Yes.
And the last thing that I said was that I wanted 6 month, or I don't know what's a long enough criteria, that we want to report back on data collection and feedback on the success or the failures,
I think 6 months is
I
reasonable.
want some
6 months. Yeah,
6
6 months.
month evaluation. I don't know what the right term is, but you know what I'm trying to say.
6 month evaluation, data report, follow-up type of, yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
something I know.
Okay, I think I have it all.
Okay.
So we can say Judy had the motion since you started it. So do I have we have a second?
Doris is second.
Second, okay. So I think we discussed it. Oh, wait.
Yeah, I think I could put up the polling question now, right?
Oh,
Whoa, fancy. Well, we're good on discussion, I think, right? I think we've all, okay.
I think we've
I
discussed
think we've discussed.
to discussing levels at the.
Oh, there it is, yeah.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Now,
Phew.
So voting in favor of this is voting in favor of our,
letter,
The letter to
Recommendation.
DOT
okay.
with our list of recommendations for the NLZ
Right.
program in Community District 10.
right, okay.
So
Thank you.
will that basically be the committee's report?
Yeah, so I think Anthony will give a little bit of history of background.
Right,
We
right.
can
Want to show
share,
me the slides?
right, we'll share the
I could
slides.
show,
with the-
yeah, the slideshow would be perfect, I think,
Right,
to
with
catch
the-
everybody up.
Right, with the full board, and then we'll write up this motion clearly, so we'll put it up on the screen so all the members of the board can see it and read it. And
And
that's
talk
it.
about it.
And talk about it,
Yes,
yes.
there will be discussion.
Okay, so all,
Not talk about it so it doesn't go forever because we've said our piece already.
okay, so it's unanimous.
Shocking.
8 members are here, so thank you very much,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Mhm.
Thank you
Great
so
meeting,
much.
Anthony.
Have a great one. Enjoy your evenings,
All right,
everybody.
good evening, everyone. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye, thank you all.
Good night.